Now let's look at the second major cause of foodborne illness: poor personal hygiene. Again, a pretty simple concept, but it's very easy for employees to contaminate food. Four of the most commonly transmitted illnesses from employee to food include hepatitis A, Salmonella typhi, Shiga toxin-producing E. coli, and Shigella. Hepatitis A is a viral disease, and the other three are bacterial. With all four of these illnesses, it's extremely important to practice good hygiene. Wash your hands, report illnesses, take daily baths, and wear clean, appropriate clothing every day. Hand washing is the most important preventative measure food service employees can practice to avoid food contamination. Though it may seem elementary, let's review the steps of proper hand washing. Apply soap. Vigorously scrub hands and arms for at least 20 seconds. The skin of your hands is able to attract, hold, and spread contaminants very easily. Clean under fingernails and between fingers. Rinse thoroughly under running water. Dry hands and arms with a single-use paper towel or warm air hand dryer. All of these steps are important. Now, if you're washing your hands properly, are you washing them at the proper time? These are examples of the times you should be washing your hands to ensure the safety of the food you handle. After using the restroom, after touching your face or body, after sneezing, coughing, or using a tissue, after smoking, chewing tobacco, and chewing gum, after taking out the garbage, after handling dirty dishes, after handling raw foods, and before handling ready-to-eat foods, and in between glove use. After you properly wash your hands, it's important to know when you can handle foods using your bare hands. In Idaho, the food code requires that there be no bare hand contact with ready-to-eat foods. So how do you minimize bare hand contact? The most common way is to use disposable gloves, but you can also use tissue or utensils. There are some rules to remember when using gloves. Gloves must never be used in place of hand washing and should be changed regularly, especially when you switch a food preparation task or if they become soiled or torn. When changing gloves, it's also important to wash your hands in between taking the soiled glove off and putting the new glove on. The next component of good personal hygiene is the reporting of employee illnesses. Certain health problems must be reported to the person in charge so that the sick employees do not contaminate food. If an employee has a fever, diarrhea, vomiting, a sore throat with fever, or jaundice, then they are restricted from working in a food establishment. Restrict means that they are restricted from working with or around food or utensils. For example, if they desire to work, they can be a host, hostess, or a cashier. If a food worker has any of these symptoms and they work with a high-risk population, then they are excluded. Exclude means they cannot come to work at all. If an employee has been diagnosed with any of these four illnesses, hepatitis A, Salmonella, Shigella, and E. coli, then they are also excluded from working in the establishment, and the regulatory authority, usually the health district, must be notified. Remember, these are the four illnesses that are most likely to be spread from an employee to food. Medical clearance is usually required before an employee is allowed to return to work. Let's illustrate the point with a short story. Harold is a cook at the local diner. He wakes up with only 15 minutes to get ready for work. Harold does not have time to shower, so he puts on the clothes he was wearing the day before that have not been washed. His stomach feels a little funny, but he decides to go to work anyway because he needs the money. On the way to work, Harold blows a tire and he repairs it as quickly as possible. By the time he gets to work, he is so late that his boss tells him to get right to work making breakfast orders without washing his hands. After the breakfast rush, Harold takes out the garbage and then starts to get the salad bar ready for the lunch shift without washing his hands. Meanwhile, Harold's stomach is feeling worse. He tells the boss, but the boss dismisses it because two other employees have already called in sick, and she can't afford to lose Harold too. Harold complies, but rushes to the restroom to relieve himself. Harold washes his hands and realizes there are no paper towels, so he just wipes his hands on his apron and gets back to work. Is this any way to run a restaurant? Let's see if we can identify some of the things that Harold and his employer did wrong. He doesn't shower, he puts on dirty clothes, he feels sick but goes to work anyway, fails to wash up before starting to cook, takes out the garbage and again fails to wash up before preparing the salad bar. His boss dismisses his illness and tells him to keep working. He goes to the bathroom and washes his hands, finally, but wipes his hands on his dirty apron. Harold's story is a pretty extreme example, but does demonstrate the many ways food can become contaminated when employees and their employers don't follow basic hygiene rules. Don't let this happen to you or the restaurant where you work.
You know, employees speak for our organizations. And when we look at employee areas, as soon as we walk into the kitchen, and this is a picture from one of our operations. So, Paul, do you see anything that ought to be a concern to a manager?
It's kind of hard to see, but it looks like there's, I guess, food, related equipment in there with the dirty towels and stuff.
Let me help you out, okay? Got a picture right here that says employees must wash their hands before reporting to duty. You got what appears to be mop strings around the faucet right next to the cleaning, with employee uniforms and aprons right next to this area. It's somewhat blocked, plus you have trash that's being swept up and the dustpan put here. You've got food being prepared right here with the can opener, and you've got a dirty linen right here, right next to the hand sink. All of that's convenient for the employee because they can do everything in one place. And if you look at the wall, we have soap that's coming down the wall, and same side here, because we don't have to wash our hands, we just have to go like this to dry them. That's air dry. Okay? Now another thing that's down here in this particular trash, and you can't see it, is some cigarette butts in this particular kitchen. So this is well within the food preparation area of a kitchen. And the health department or our client walks in and sees this, and it's right next to a manager's office. In Texas, what's the requirement of you as a manager? First requirement, that you be knowledgeable of food safety, of how an operation should be run, that you demonstrate that particular knowledge. Now, based on this picture and the office next door, what's your first thought as an inspector, as a client walking into this operation?
The manager's not practicing the knowledge of or what they know or don't know about food safety.
So you walk into the office and all the food handlers' cards are up to date, the permit is up to date, but the perception is you're not walking the talk. So immediately, I have the need to dive deeply into that operation, to look closer than I would if everything looked well when I first walked in. But it also speaks to the fact that, you know, if I've got a sign here that says employees must wash their hand before coming to work, yeah, you got the sign up, and that's a requirement. You got the sign up. But do the employees really wash their hands? So the next thing I'm going to look at is I'm going to look at the practices of the employees as I walk around and see if there's gloves being used and if they're being changed out, to see if hands are being put onto equipment handles and leaving food residue, to see if the aprons are dirty and they're doing this or like that, or going out for a break, smoking a cigarette, coming back in and getting right back into the food. So my 15 to 20 minute inspection has now turned into a 3-hour inspection based upon observations. Any questions? Clarifications? Yes, sir.
Would there be some, why is there a prep table in the same room as the mops, and why is there even a hand sink in the same area where you have your cleaning supplies?
A lot of our facilities are old. They were built a long time ago. Hand sinks have to be normally within 25 feet, right? But more importantly, it goes back to this is a movable table. This is a movable mop stand. So that manager should demonstrate their knowledge of this by looking at the operation and saying, we need to move this. I can tell you that this kitchen no longer looks this way. This piece of equipment has been moved to the back dock. The mops are now air drying appropriately and not over a hand sink. I can tell you that this hand sink is now just that, a hand sink that is accessible to employees. And I can also tell you that the food preparation is not taking place right next to it. Even though that's not a violation, okay, it's not a good idea. So that can opener has been relocated because it's mobile equipment. So we rethought the process of how we're handling food in that kitchen. Now, the manager now has applied their knowledge of hazard analysis, critical control points, focused on what's happening in my operation from back door to service with my employees working in that area. And that's one of the things that they're judged on. Do they have a HACCP plan in place? Okay?
I want to elaborate on one point that Bruce has made here, and that is the expansion of inspections by the feel of the place. You know, when somebody walks in, whether it's me, Bruce, health inspector, or one of our clients' internal inspection units, and they, for example, open a drawer for the utensils, and they see crumbs and it's all disorganized, it shows that detail isn't being followed. When they walk in and they feel it clean and they don't see the little things, then they're going to feel really good about the place, and they're going to know the big things are taken care of, just innately, it's natural to feel that way. So the general cleanliness, wiping down every corner, make sure the corners are clean, there's not something underneath, there's not a fry under anything, those type of things. Organization is so important to your overall food safety inspections.
Let me say something about senses. What are the 5 senses? We can see, we can smell, we can hear, we can touch. What else? What did I miss? Taste. Did I put smell on there? What do you think this area smelled like? Okay. Now, there's a word called organoleptic. And what does organoleptic speak to? A 6th sense. And that's a combination of all of them. Okay? So it's perception. It's how does everything fit together? And you think about that in food service. It looks good. It smells good. It tastes good. It has a good bite to it. It has a good feel to it. Man, that was a great meal. Overall, it was a great meal. Now, it can look good and not taste good. It can smell good and not taste good. It can feel good but taste terrible. So think about that. It's a combination of all the senses in food service that leads to that greater acceptance from a customer.